Hello everyone, this is Dr. Catalana. The purpose of this video is to walk you through how I would approach this interpreting standardized test practice. So I wrote you a little note up here that this is really good practice for your time in the field, particularly as you enter your junior year, or for those of you who have not taken EdCo 201 and 202, if that's in your program of study. It's really important that you're able to look at these standardized tests and make some kind of sense of them. And the key word there is some. You do not have to understand everything. I think that's the big thing that I always tell my students. Don't be intimidated. You can make sense out of this information. Okay, so I'm going to walk through each of these different tests one by one, see if we can look at some of the data here. So our first test is for Girard, and this is the South Carolina PASS. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull that up, wherever it is. Here we go. All right, so here's Girard. Okay, now if you look here, there is a lot going on. So we have Access, we have MAP, PASS, SC Ready. That's a lot of scores in one place. And the reason that is this is a real score report. So when you are in the field or you have your own classroom, when you go to look at student scores, it will be all in one place. So actually these are various different tests. So Access is one test. We use this a lot for English language learners. MAP is a great test to look at growth. And then here we have South Carolina PASS and South Carolina Ready. So the reason they're all together is because one of my teacher friends actually downloaded this for me out of her system, and this is what it looks like. Now some of you may be like, okay, Dr. Cott, why did you give us all of this information? Because I want you to practice looking through a lot of stuff to get what's actually important. Okay, so we're going to look just at SC PASS. Okay, so we're just actually looking at this tiny spot right here. So SC PASS is statewide. It's given grades 4 through 8, and it's for both science and social studies. Okay, so the SC PASS, we'll see we have a grade 5 in 2018. So Girard must be in 5th grade in 2018. In 2017, these were the scores that he had in grade 4. Okay, so first off, this section down here, this is actually kind of from the website on South Carolina PASS. It's telling me what in the world is this test actually measuring. Okay, so I see specific content, science and social studies. You see it's state standards. So this is definitely measuring our South Carolina state standards. And it's specifically for science and for social studies. Okay, so I'm looking through. This is actually just describing what kind of test items there may be. This right here is beautiful. This is the alignment to standards. So you can actually click here and you could follow to the list of standards, which is so helpful as that teacher. This is why I'm telling you, you've got to do your alignment. You choose a standard, you align your objectives to that standard. You've been, quote, preparing your students for SC PASS from day one. Okay, and then even down here, it's showing me my specific science and my specific social studies standards. Okay, so that's just a brief overview here. So let's look at our questions. Does South Carolina PASS use norm referenced or criterion reference grading? Remember, if it was norm, this would be like comparing students to each other. Criterion reference is comparing students to a predetermined standard, right? Now, the fact that South Carolina PASS is aligned to the South Carolina Science and Social Studies answers tells me pretty quickly this is criterion reference grading, right? So my predetermined standard in this case are the South Carolina Science and Social Social studies standards. Okay, so that's one hint. It's definitely aligned to those specific standards. Now also, another hint that this is definitely going to be a criterion reference is let's just look at this limited information we've got. A key term here is approaches expectations, right? So anytime that we are labeling students into different levels, we call those proficiency levels, such as like below, approaching, meets, and exceeds. Those are proficiency levels. And anytime we're putting students into levels like that, it's their level toward meeting a predetermined standard. So my level toward meeting the predetermined standard in science is approaching expectations. So when you see verbiage like that, like approaching expectations, meets expectations, you'll see here in South Carolina Ready, we call them performance levels. That's a big hint this is criterion referenced. Also, just from this limited information, I know Girard's score, and that's it. I don't know anything about how Girard compares to the other students. So another point that this is criterion referenced and not norm referenced. Okay, so South Carolina pass in grade 4 was what? So if I go here, South Carolina pass in grade 4, he got a 1449 and he was approaching expectations. Okay, now the scale score range for approaches in grade 4 is what? So let's just go ahead and put this. He got a 1449 and he was approaching. So let's look down a little bit more into this score report and see what does it mean to be approaching. Okay, so what I'm doing is just scrolling through and figuring out, is there any more info? Well, here's the different types of standards. This right here, this is helpful. These are my test blueprints. Remember, we've talked about that. A blueprint is basically like an outline of the exam. So remember before we took our midterm, I had you tally how many times we use various terms, and that kind of helped you predict what would be most heavily tested for your midterm. Same thing. This is the most commonly tested standards, so very helpful in the sense of choosing what to cover in your class. So I'm still going. All right, here we go. Something about these performance levels. So we know that he was approaching expectations, and this is what I want. Okay, so he got a 1449 in grade 4. Let's look at this scale here. So from 1434 to 1449, that means he's in approaching. But he's right on the edge. He's almost meeting. Okay? So it's important that you look at this breakdown, and that's why I gave you all of this information. You'll have to really learn to sift through information to find what you need. Okay, so the scale score range, I don't remember the bottom, but the top was a 449, which tells me he was super close to meeting expectations. Okay, so how did he do on a South Carolina Pass Science in 2018? All right, so we're going to go back. South Carolina Pass Science. Where are we at? 2018 Science. What is this? It's blank. What does that mean? Guys, it means he wasn't there. Something happened, right? He was sick at home. He was moving. He didn't happen to be there the day of the test. And I always get students confused on this question, but I want to give you that example, real world, you will not have all the data. So your answer is, for this case, we don't know. He was not there to take the test. Hopefully I didn't trick you guys too much there. Okay, so let's look at social studies. Girard's score for South Carolina Pass Social Studies, grade 5 was what? So grade 5 social studies, he earned a 653. Now, what does that 653 mean? All right, we have to kind of do some research here. Let's find that beautiful table we had earlier. He had a 653. All right, here we are. Grade 5, 653. You'll notice that he met the expectation, right? Because he's falling into that range of 600 to 657. Okay, so those were the only questions that I gave you for South Carolina PASS. Again, this is a criterion referenced test because I am measuring the students on a predetermined standard of how well they know the science and social studies standards. Okay, a couple of things to be sure that you know in this case is these are your proficiency levels from does not meet up to exceeds, and not all students who score exceeds are the same, right? That means they could have had a 1468, but it also means they could have had a 1530. Okay, so that is the South Carolina PASS. Okay, so let's move on from South Carolina PASS, and now we're going to look at Marcus McRae. Okay, so this is a MAP student progress report. The key term there is progress. So we are tracing student progress. Now, this can get kind of confusing because I have searched and searched for a more clear image of this student progress report, but this is the best I could find. So the first thing we need to do is pull up Marcus's progress report, and let's see what grade he was in fall 2014. All right, so we're in the map. Again, I know this is blurry and I'm sorry. Fall 2014. Let's see here. Fall, got that FA for fall 2014. He was in grade 8. Okay, now again, these type of things look really overwhelming. What is FF, SP, WI? This is when you take a breath. You don't freak out, right? On another, it says it somewhere in here what those mean, but those are just the times, your term and your year. So fall, spring, and winter. So in the fall of 14, he was in grade 8. Awesome. So how did he do in reading fall of 2014, and how did he do in reading fall of 2015? So fall of 2014, what's going on here? Am I looking at the right thing? This is such an important mistake. I'm not looking at his reading scores, I'm looking at his math scores. All right, so dial back. Fall of 2014, here we go. How did he do on these scores? So you'll see here that you have a 212 up to a 219. So this right here is actually his range. So one thing that's so important when you're reading MAP scores is to always look at just the center, right? So in the fall of 2014, he earned a 216. That 212 to 219 is just the error, okay? So he earned a 216 in the fall of 2014, but then he actually went down to a 210, all right? So let's kind of try to figure out what's going on with that. So 2014, he had a 216. 2015, he had a 210. Okay, so from 216 to 210. And the reason I wanted to really emphasize this is where did that -5 come from? That's because he actually went down, okay? And actually this should be 211, sorry about that. So the difference between 216 and 211, that's where we're getting that -5. Okay, now what's going on with that? How come in the fall of 2014 he did higher than the fall of 2015? Well, we don't know, but it could be multiple reasons, right? Hello, he had a bad day. Or maybe during the summer before he took that fall 2015, he was really uninvolved in anything academic versus the summer when he took it before in 2014, it was more of an academic summer. Okay, so you actually will see these negative growths every once in a while, and it's not really that big of a deal unless it's like a much bigger number here. Okay, so in the fall of 2015, what was his percentile for reading? All right, so I'm coming fall of 15. What was his percentile for reading? All right, you'll see, again, 3 numbers. Anytime you see 3 numbers, you're going in the middle, right? Because this is your range. So from 23 to 36, his percentile was actually the 29th percentile. So he was in the 29th percentile. What do you do with that? How do you explain that to a parent? Remember that being in the 29th percentile means he scored the same or better than 29% of the students who took the test. Okay, so it's not necessarily bad, but that's not a very high percentile. Remember, if he's in, like, let's say that he was in the 80th percentile, that would mean he scored the same or better than 80%. So another way we could phrase that is he's in the top 20%. Okay, so in fall 2015, was he low, low average, average, high average, or high? Okay, here's your performance indicators. Fall 2015, I'm in reading. All right, so we've got a score of 211. So let's go down. Let's see, how can we figure this out? Uh-oh, what do we do? How do I figure it out? Now I'm awkwardly pausing because, again, guys, this is going to happen. Wait a second, I don't have my nice little chart that I'm used to. Well, what other data do I have? So fall 2015, his score was 211, and his percentile was a 29th percentile. So let's see if I can get anything about this percentile. All right, here we go. Goal descriptor translates the percentile to one of the following, right? So he was 29th percentile. So we're going to put him in the low average group. Student goal scores fall within the 21st to 40th percentile. Okay, so don't be at all intimidated by these types of score reports. It's just a matter of doing a lot of investigating. Okay, how do students in Marcus's districts compare to the norm group? All right, so here we are. This is Marcus's growth. So the blue is the student, and the orange is the district, and the yellow is the grade level. Okay, now this little dotted right here is kind of like projecting where Girard's going to be within the next couple of testing scenarios. So right here we are comparing students to each other. What we're doing is just charting their scores. So this is not really norm referenced. We're just showing the criterion reference information on a graph so we can compare them. So you'll see that Girard is lower than the district grade level, and also this yellow is like the national grade level. So a couple things to notice here that fits along with him being in the low average group. And also it is important to note that the district is slightly below where the grade norm would be nationally. And then to consider his growth, we would follow this dotted line. Okay, so that's Marcus. Your big overview for the map is there are typically 3 scores. MAP calls their scores RIT. It's just what they call the score. And you always want to go in the middle. Okay, so this is where reliability comes in. That's why they give you this range. But the true score, or I'm sorry, the observed score in this case was a 222. Same thing with percentile range. The observed range was 34. Another thing to note with MAP is that it's tracing progress season by season, right? So we have fall, winter, spring. And it also is helpful because it presents that information alongside the district and the state, or the district and the national norm. Okay, last one we want to look at is the ACT Aspire. So this is Kalia. All right, so we're going to imagine that Kalia's mom came for a parent-teacher conference. In fact, for my advanced assessment classes, we are doing parent-teacher mock conferences for our final. So let's look at Kalia here, and let's see how she's doing. So here's the ACT Aspire. Couple of things going on here. First thing I'm noticing are these descriptors: exceeding, exceeding, not tested, ready, exceeding, ready. Okay. Then I'm seeing an actual score, which tells me there is a highest score that she could earn. And all of that is telling me, okay, this is criterion reference because I'm measuring up to 460 and then I'm placing you into these proficiency levels. So when I see those proficiency levels, this section is definitely criterion referenced. Okay, same thing down here. English, I'm seeing, oh, she scored 11 of 13 questions. So that was 85% of those questions. This is, again, criterion reference. So how well did she do on the 13 English production of writing questions? All right. Another thing I love in the sense of the ACT Aspire are these improvement ideas down here. So something interesting about ACT Aspire is, yes, it's criterion referenced, but then they also give me this national percentile rank. Remember last week I told you whenever we have that TH, that means it's a percentile, so the 78th. Whenever we have a percent, like 85%, that tells me it's criterion referenced. So what percentage of the scores or of the items did she answer correctly? Okay, so overall, Kalia is doing pretty well. She's doing a lot exceeding, and where she's not exceeding, she's ready. And you'll see that she's got some pretty high national percentiles as well. So let's imagine that we're meeting with Kalia's parents. What does it mean that she's in the 78th percentile? She loves science, but seeing the score makes me worry. This happens all the time. Parents freak out when they see that 78. They think it means she earned a 78%. Really what this means is she scored the same or better than 78% of the students who took the test. Okay? You could kind of flip that and say she's in like the top 22%. Who are Kalia's scores being compared to? You'll see that this was a national percentile rank. That's important, right? So always think about that when you're analyzing these results. So it's a national percentile rank. All right, last couple of questions here. Kalia doesn't like standardized tests. If she took the test again, do you think she could do better? This is yet another, I get this question all the time. Well, if we just did this one more time, don't you think she could score better? So something to keep in mind in this case is no test is perfect, right? But it is important to notice that unless different situations were happening, i.e. she studied a lot differently, her score is not really going to change that much. So This is the scale score range, right? Look at this. This is purely about reliability. All measurements, including test scores, contain uncertainty. Your test score indicates how well you performed on the actual test day. This range shows you this is what you would likely get if you were to take the test again. So somewhere between a 434 and 438. Okay, and lastly, look at the skills proficiency. What do these skills proficiency percentages mean, and how can I support Kalia at home? I also get this question a lot. So looking down here, these are criterion referenced. How do I know? Because I see this percentile, or I'm sorry, this percent sign, and also 11 of 13 questions. So I have a predetermined standard of 13 questions. So where is she struggling the most? So reading, integration of knowledge and ideas, science, evaluation of models, and then even down here, it will give specific ideas for how to support that child. Okay, so this is just a brief overview of these 3 different tests. I wouldn't expect you to have all of this memorized, guys. Again, the purpose of our class is to practice putting these things in a real-world scenario. So you should be able to analyze score reports, but I would never ask you to have things memorized in the sense of like, how much do you need to earn in order to be exceeding? No. These types of analysis questions that we've walked through today would be much more of a real-world example there. Okay, so I hope that you guys are all doing well. Of course, feel free to contact me if you have any questions.